Ratchet and Clank is my favorite video game series of all time. I'm amazed by how good this series is, for the most part. There are so many great games to pick from and just play it! They're really fun third-person shooters / platformers. I have played the series ever since I was like 10 years old and have never gotten tired of it ever since. I play these games like every year, but here is one thing that I have never done for like every game: collecting all the skill points. What are skill points, you might ask? Well, they are basically like achievements where you have to do like a specific task in the game to get rewarded with basically an achievement. They are used to unlock cheats, concept arts and whatnot. These were first introduced in Spyro 2, and they have implemented them into the Ratchet and Clank series ever since the first game. Now, I have played the first 3 games like so many times and collected the skill points every time I replay them, but I remembered that, wait a minute, I have never actually collected the skill points in the other games. And I thought to myself, why not collect them in the other games as well? I mean, how hard can it be? It was like pretty difficult for a lot of them. Ever since the PS4 game, they have pretty much removed the skill point system because the trophies have pretty much replaced the skill points. My issue with the trophies is that once you have collected the trophies, you can't make a separate save file and collect them again. You can't even delete trophies from the PSN account, so you'd have to make an entirely new account in order to get all the trophies again. But I'm not gonna talk about the PS4 game and Rift Apart. This video is entirely focused on the first game all the way to Into the Nexus. For the most part, it was fun to revisit the series and collect the skill points, which gave it a new light to the games I haven't experienced before. On the other, some of them are a chore to collect and really difficult at times. And this is what the whole video is about. I'm gonna be talking about my experience collecting them and how much of a pain it was to do so. So without further ado, let's begin with the first game. When it comes to collecting skill points in the first game, they're actually pretty easy. That goes for most of the skill points in the first 3 games. I mean, I think it's mainly because I played these games and collected the skill points like so many times and pretty much got used to them. There are a total of 30 skill points you have to collect. Most of the skill points you do aren't really much to write home about. Some are very simple tasks like blow up 10 vehicles, or turn a tank into a chicken, or beat a boss using only your wrench. Some do require you having to either come back another time once you obtain the right gadget or weapon, or you play it on challenge mode, where you pretty much do have most of the weapons you need to complete most of them. It is possible to get all of the skill points on a new save file in this game, but here is the problem. The game does give you skill points when you get them, but the game does not tell you how to obtain it. The goodies menu is unlocked when you beat the game and play on challenge mode, but even then the game does not tell you at all how to get the ones you haven't obtained yet. So unless you have them memorized already, you pretty much have to look up a guide online on how to obtain them. It would be kind of pointless to talk about every single one I got because like they're such simple tasks, even a baby could get most of them. So I'll just talk about the most interesting ones. An example I want to bring up is the swing it skill point. This one requires you to swing shot through the final section of the alternate path without touching the ground. It's easy, but the thing is sometimes the skill point doesn't register and you have to try again. And this is a trend you see a lot throughout the series. The skill point system just kinda picks and chooses which ones you are allowed to get. Sometimes doesn't even register at all, or which ones you are allowed to die on and which ones you aren't. Like for example, the final skill point requires you to kill those flying enemies with just your wrench, and you are allowed to die on it because the skill point still keeps count. It gets pretty annoying with some of them, and we will get into them later on. One that I think is a bit challenging is beating the hoverboard race in 1 minute and 35 seconds or less. This one requires you to get every boost pad you can and do a bunch of shortcuts. And even then, you are barely able to make it. You might have to retry it multiple times due to how strict the time limit is. Another one is once you obtain the Platinum Summerator, you are able to do a bunch of tricks in midair and get additional boost. You have to perform one trick in particular called the Twisty McMarks, and it not only involves gaining a lot of airtime, but you are also required to hold all of the back buttons each only once and consecutively, and move the left stick to spin 4 full rotations flawlessly, and you get the skill point. Sure, I managed to get the skill point on my first try here, but that's because I got lucky. It is a pretty difficult trick to perform, which would likely take you a while to do it right. Heck, I managed to do that skill point on the PS Vita version with its weird touchpad that replaces the L and R triggers, which was way harder. Jumping requires you to do this grind roll section without getting hit, which is easier said than done because of those bombs in the way. You have the option to either jump over it, or you can time it right and hit the bombs in your way with the wrench. One that would likely screw you over are the 3 bombs here, but the easiest way to do it is to use the pyrocitor and like burn everything in your way. There is another skill point on Commando 3 which requires you to do the same thing, but here you can do the same, which is by equipping the pyrocitor and burn all of the bombs. The depth perception can easily screw you over with the trains, but you know, once you got it down, you got it down. So get good. There was one skill point on Orkson that required me to get the taunter and lure all of those enemies into a laser wall. The problem I had was that I only had enough bolts to get the nanotech upgrade that I wanted, and I was only down to like 300 bolts, which isn't enough to buy the taunter. But then luckily I remembered, oh wait a second, there's another path in Pokitaro that I didn't go through. So I went there and luckily got just enough bolts to get the taunter. I mean, it's already bad enough that the enemies in this level are bullet sponges that eat up all of your ammo. There is one skill point on Old Tannis that is a bit annoying. You have to shoot down all of those street lamps in the level. You have 2 options. Either you hunt them all down using the Visibomb from the starting area, which is a bit annoying due to having to figure out where the level areas are that have street lamps, or you go through the entire level searching for them, which by the way, you are not allowed to die a single time in the level if you do it that way, because if you do, all of the street lamps respawn and you have to break all of them again. So pick your poison on that one. Another skill point that is pretty difficult to collect in this game is Magician, where you have to attain a trick score of 4500 in the hoverboard race. I also managed to do it on the first try because I so happened to get a few Twisty Mac marks into the mix, which gives you the most amount of points. You have to figure out which ones give you the most points, so get good. Another skill point that is difficult to do is Careful Cruise, where you have to complete the underwater section without getting hit once. The problem with that one is that not only are there mines and spider bots you have to look out for, but those spinning blades that are way too big and don't give you much room to get by, with some even moving faster than the others. So like, get good. And I think those are all of the difficult ones. Like I said, the others are fairly simple to collect, and I don't think you'd have that big of a problem collecting them all. If you get 15 skill points, you will unlock the sketchbook, which is basically concept art, and completing all 30 will unlock this epilogue that shows what happens after you beat the game and the style of those magazine covers, which I think is pretty neat. And with that out of the way, let's go to the next game. Once again, we got 30 skill points to collect, and this one introduces something new. In the previous game, the skill points were only meant for specific planets, which is also the case here. But now we have some skill points that you can just get in general. There are only 3 in total, which are to get the max out of your health, get all the weapons and upgrades, and get all upgrades for your ship. Later games give you way more skill points you get in general that aren't specific to just each planet. And also, once again, it would be pointless to point out every single skill point because they're fairly simple once again. So let's once again talk about the most interesting ones. There are skill points that require you to break all of the breakable objects in a level. It's a lot easier to do with the box breaker, which by the way, I kinda miss how the box breaker broke stuff in the environment to get extra bolts. We don't get this anymore after the PS2 games, and it only breaks the boxes. But anyways, I find it interesting because there is one planet that does require you to break everything in the environment. But then we got planets like Maktar Resort and Endako, where the objective is to break everything, but like there is still some breakable objects that are there, but like I still get the skill point, so like I have to break a certain number? I don't know, it's pretty weird. Clank needs a new pair of shoes is a pretty boring skill point. You have to hit those slot machines in order to get the jackpot. I don't even think this one is based on luck. I think it's more based on how many times you hit the slot machines, which can be pretty boring, because you're just continuously hitting them and you have to wait until you get the jackpot. Which is also a bit annoying for the fact that the slot machines can blow up and you have to find different ones. It just so happened that all of the slot machines in the level got destroyed, so I had to die and try again. Wrench Ninja is fairly simple. You have to beat Chainblade with only the wrench. It's pretty easy to beat Chainblade. The one I find kinda cheap is 2B or not 2B hit. You have to fight the B2 brawler without getting hit. The problem is his shots are way too close and can hit you pretty easily, and once he starts spinning around, you barely have any room to move around in the area, and the blade spins so fast it's hard to avoid it. It is possible to do the skill point very early on in the game, but I would recommend doing it once you obtain stronger weapons to beat him easily. Once you get to Tabora, oh boy. Heal Your Chi is obtained by collecting all 100 crystals in the desert. It's a very big open area and it's very difficult to find them all. You can make it easier by looking at the map and look at all of the areas that aren't highlighted in yellow. This might take you a while due to how huge the map is. And if that's not good enough for ya, well, then there's a second level with another 100 crystals to collect. You cannot be serious. Now, here is the thing you're probably gonna say. Pyro, why don't you use the mapper that highlights all the crystals on your map? Well, here is the thing. Online, it tells me that I can get the mapper that will highlight the crystals, but I did collect the mapper and it doesn't show me where the crystals are. I don't know if this is like a bug or something, which was really annoying because I had to go through the entire wasteland to find one single crystal. And on top of that, Grelbin is like the worst level in the game due to the snow beasts everywhere, which are huge bullet sponges, are way too big and they come in big groups. The best trick is just to run past everything. And wanna know something else? Sometimes the game can just bug out and not give you the skill point on Grelbin, despite the fact that you collected all 100 moonstones. This happened to me before, and if that happens to you, well then have fun playing the whole game again on challenge mode and try again. You cannot be serious. Old School is an interesting one. You have to defeat all of the enemies on Dobo using only the Ratchet and Clank 1 weapons. However, the issue is the Ratchet and Clank 1 weapons are heavily nerfed in this game, so you barely do any damage using them and you can't level them up. They probably do a lot more damage in challenge mode with the upgraded versions, but I wanted to see how early I could get most of the skill points in the series. I actually immediately screwed up doing it because I used normal weapons before I realized, hold on, there's a skill point here. So the skill point didn't count and I had to revisit the plan to do it. Duke's Up is a boring one. You have to fight the Fox for Less leader with only your melee. The problem is they already have a huge health bar and he constantly runs away from you. And the thing that does the most amount of damage to you are those helicopters flying everywhere. So this one might take a while. It took me like 10 minutes to beat him, which is pretty long, especially when you're just doing the same thing over and over again. Planet Yoba. Oh my god. Wrench Ninja 2. This is the worst skill point in the game. So the challenge here is to defeat all of the enemies in the level using only your wrench. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, it is actually when you have pretty good armor. So what's the issue? Well, the skill point is completely bugged. There's a chance that the skill point just won't register even after you killed all of the enemies. This is especially apparent when you play it on challenge mode. I swear, this happened to me like so many times where the skill point just won't register despite the fact I killed all the enemies using the wrench. This made a lot of people think that the reason it doesn't work is because enemies are getting killed by turrets or that you use the turret and therefore it doesn't count. One of the things that makes the skill point not count at all is you dying in the level, which requires you to have to reload the save file and try again. But even that didn't work when I played it on challenge mode. Well, here is the thing. The skill point does seem to register every time when you play it on a new save file, not in challenge mode. This is how it always worked for me. But the weird thing is, I have seen so many people try out the skill point in challenge mode and it did indeed work. So I have no clue exactly what they're doing differently. So my suggestion is to obtain the skill point on a new save file. Don't try it in challenge. If you are, then you're kinda screwed and you have to play the whole game again. You cannot be serious. So like, good luck, I guess. The Impossible Challenge. This one is obtained by beating the Impossible Challenge in the second arena, which consists of 60 rounds. On challenge modes, the challenge consists of 100 rounds, so I'd recommend doing the challenge on a new save file. This one is actually pretty easy to do. The way I did it is just use the bouncer and run in circles collecting the ammo crates so I don't run out of bouncer ammo. Do this for 60 rounds, fight the boss, and you've done it. Not only do you get the skill point, but you also get 200,000 bolts, so I recommend you doing the skill point on a new save file, because that amount of bolts will help you out during later levels. Now, Nice Ride is actually pretty easy to collect. My strategy is just to go to Felsen system and get 60 raritanium. Once you got 60, go to the ship shack and get the nuke. Once you obtained it, just go back to the level and keep farming for raritanium. And once you have enough, you can pretty much buy everything from the vendor, and there you go. Getting all the weapons and upgrades isn't really all that possible to do on a new save file, so you have to replay the game again on challenge mode and upgrade all the weapons. What's funny is that once I bought the Zodiac, I got the skill point anyways, despite the fact I haven't bought the Clank Zapper and didn't level it up. So like, either the game bugged out again, or that's just the way it was coded, I don't know. So I mean, I got lucky and got the final skill point. I wouldn't really say the skill points are that difficult to obtain. It's more so annoying than anything, because of how time consuming those are. The rest are once again fairly simple, and it can be pretty easily done. So there you go, those are some of the more interesting skill points in the second game. And now it's time to move on to my favorite game in the series. Surprisingly enough, the skill points in this game aren't that bad. Sure, there are ones that are a little bit annoying to collect, but it's not like difficult or anything. Most of them are once again stuff like do this challenge without getting hit, or kill a specific number of enemies using this weapon, and so on. There isn't really too much to be said really, but it doesn't mean there aren't some interesting ones. So let me ask you something. Did you like collecting all the crystals in Going Commando? No? Well, that's too bad, because here's another one! This time on Planet Aquados there are these sewer crystals you have to collect, which is like, okay. And this time when you obtain the Map-O-Matic, it does show you where all the crystals are. But I'll be honest, this one is probably the worst one of the three. While you could easily boost around the open area to quickly get around the place, the issue with the sewer section is that the pipes activate your gravity boots, which cancels all of your methods to move around quickly. And while the ones in Going Commando were open areas, this one is pretty much just narrow paths built like a maze, so it's very annoying to navigate around the place. What makes it even worse is that they blocked off some of the paths where like the big amiibos are supposed to come out, but they only appear from one side, so you have to make your way around the place to get to the other side so it can spawn in. It's not difficult, it's just annoying.
That's the last of them.
Now I can finally make my wife that sewer crystal necklace she's always wanted.
Say, what are sewer crystals? Exactly.
Oh, trust me, it's better you don't know. Well, boys, I'll be seeing you one of these days.
Another one I found kinda annoying is that once again having to hit the jackpot on those slot machines. Like, seriously, they were boring enough in Going Commando, we don't need them again. Another one that was kinda annoying is having to kill 40 enemies using the suck cannon on the crash site. The enemies eat up all of your ammo despite having the suck cannon on level 4. And it's tough finding ammo, cause there are too many enemies shooting at you. But I did eventually get the skill point. I don't know if dying in the level still counts, but I think it probably does. The ones you'd probably have a harder time with is the Quark Vid comics that each require you to beat a specific time in each one of them. It is important to know when you have to wall jump instead of climb, or use elevators, or when you have to defeat certain enemies. I mean, it's not like brutally difficult or anything, but it might take you a few tries, but it's not like that bad really. I think the hardest one has to be the 5th vid comic, where you have to act very quickly and time your jumps properly. Heck, I did the 4th one on a normal playthrough without even like trying really, and I just barely made it. There is the skill point where you have to get all of the collectibles in the vid comics, which can be a bit tough because some of the collectibles are like in spots you wouldn't normally figure out. So I just recommend looking up a guide for that. One skill point I don't really like is the one where you have to bite the Infernox armor armor in order to get the turn up the heat skill point. I know it's not like a difficult skill point or anything, but you know, sometimes I just like replaying the game without having to buy any armor. So I might just get everything in the game aside from this one skill point I can't collect. Because a thing about the early Ratchet and Clank games is that you can't change the armor once you bought it. I'm glad other games don't do this. And with that, I guess I already talked about the most interesting ones. Again, there isn't really a whole lot to talk about with this game's skill points. And personally, this is my favorite Ratchet and Clank game. It's always great to pick it up and play through it again. There aren't that many major bugs from what I recall that like messes up your skill points or anything. So, you know, it's a pretty solid experience. So, what's next on the list? Honestly, there isn't a whole lot I can say about like specific skill points really. This game has a total of 165 skill points, which good lord is a lot. Each planet has 15 skill points, with some being actually pretty easy to get. You will just randomly get skill points without you even realizing it, because the structure around the skill points is a lot different compared to the mainline games. It's stuff like kill 10 enemies with the same weapon in a row, or kill 5 enemies with this weapon in a row, or use this weapon with this specific mod. It is pretty time consuming, I guess is all I can say. I mean, I can't believe I recorded all this footage of me obtaining all the skill points just so I end up not saying much about this game. On the bright side, it does actually tell you how to obtain the skill points this time. Wow, I'm shocked. It only took like 4 games to figure that out, but finally they tell us how to obtain the skill points. From my memory, there are some that are like a little bit difficult to collect. For example, there were times where the skill points just wouldn't register. Like one was called Schooled, where I had to kill those flying things using the hover ship, but it just didn't work and I had to try again. Or like one called A Baker's Dozen, where I had to kill 13 cycloids using the same weapon, which I did. I even played the entire stage using only the dual Vipers, but it still didn't count for some reason. So I had to play the whole level again, and only then it worked. Or one challenge where I had to beat one stage without breaking any health crates. I did just that and it didn't count anyways, so I had to redo it like twice. There is one skill point called the Runaway, where you have to complete the challenge Landstalker Stalking without taking any damage to your Landstalker. This one is easier said than done, because avoiding anything with your Landstalker is like nearly impossible to do. I have attempted this like multiple times until I realized I could just go out of the Landstalker and beat the mission without it. Until, once again, the skill points just wouldn't count and I had to try again. Yeah, there's a lot of those kinds of skill points throughout the game, where sometimes you just have to get lucky to get the one you want. One I remember is where I had to break all of the bonus crates, but they were so hard to find that I was just aimlessly walking around the whole map until I had to look up a walkthrough that showed me where they are. One I also remember is that I had to kill 5 Leviathans with the Obliterator, which wasn't possible to do early on, but even when I was on level 8, I barely did any damage, but I still managed to get the skill point. There are like 2 skill points that you can only obtain in challenge mode, where you have to complete a mission on Exterminator difficulty, which, by the way, good luck playing the game that way, because the enemies are brutal. If a skill point is too difficult, it is recommended to lower the difficulty temporarily. So yeah, I'm sorry, but there isn't too much to say here. The skill points have been more simplified to fit the game's structure more. While again, not really difficult, it can be time consuming, and you have to be lucky that the skill points actually registers and doesn't just bug out for no reason. This is kind of the fear that I had with a lot of the skill points throughout the series, that it just wouldn't register or bug out, which luckily didn't really happen all too often. But that fear was still in the back of my head. I mean, the games have crashed on me like multiple times, which I don't know why that's a thing in like every Ratchet and Clank game I own. I guess the PlayStations just can't handle the game's awesomeness, you know? So yeah, that's the best I got. I explained how the skill points works, and there's really not much to say. Next game. Oh boy, size matters. I don't like Ratchet and Clank Size Matters. This was the first portable Ratchet and Clank game which was specifically designed for the PSP. This game was also not developed by Insomniac Games. It was instead made by High Impact Games, and they're well known for making terrible games based off Ratchet and Clank and Jak and Daxter. Luckily enough, Sony ported this game to the PS5, and luckily I was able to get this port for free due to the fact that I've already bought this game previously for the PS Vita. And they do include the option for you to use save states and the rewind feature. You may think it's cheating to use those features, but in my defense, I'm playing Ratchet and Clank Size Matters. And collecting the skill points in this game wasn't really all that fun by comparison to the original trilogy, really. I mean, once again, there are some easy ones, but then there are some which are just a chore to collect. There are only 25 skill points in this game, and they don't tell you how to obtain them? What the heck? I thought we learned from that previously. You cannot be serious. Actually, I think some of these skill points are either not well thought out or are just completely buggy. Like, for example, one of the first skill points involves you having to make these plants eat 4 of the little ones. The issue is when you get close to them, they kill you in like 2 hits, and the small enemies do get closer to where you are. So I attempted to make the plant like eat the small ones by just continuously jumping around the place, hoping that it would eat the 4 of them. But I kept on dying. So the solution I found was to just stand on this spot and just wait for the small guys to just walk to the plants so they can eat them. I don't think this was the intended way, but it's like such an awkward skill point to pull off. I mean, honestly, I think you are meant to get stronger armor and then come back to do the skill point to nullify the damage. But like, again, it's very awkward due to the bad camera in this game being able to like barely see anything at all. Once you get to Metalis, you have to play all of the Clank arena missions in order to get the ultimate gladiator skill point. Every time I play the game, I am reminded about the fact that Ratchet doesn't get an arena, which would actually be useful to level up your weapons in this game, but no, we get a Clank arena instead, which I never actually play at all. It's like they knew no one was gonna play them, so they intentionally made a skill point where you have to beat all of them. It's not that it's like difficult or anything, they're just really boring and time consuming because you're in like those bizarre vehicles with slippery controls fighting other robots. I mean, thank God they're not that difficult, otherwise I would have been a lot angrier. There is one skill point in the dream level where you have to defeat waves of enemies on the last island in under 45 seconds. I swear this skill point is bugged, and I'm not even the only one. I saw reports online where people also completed this in like under 45 seconds, but the skill points still didn't count like at all. The way I did it was to use the flamethrower on the bird enemies and the double barrels on the Quark clones. I did it like 4 times in under 45 seconds, but it still wouldn't count. So then I came back again to that level, which by the way, I had to replay the whole thing again just to get to the last island. I did the same thing and now suddenly it worked. Like, I seriously have no idea what I did differently this time. It's so bizarre. There are these on-rail giant Clank stages where you have to shoot your enemies and earn points. I would recommend holding on the rockets for the final boss, because you need some of them to defeat waves of enemies. On the first one you have to reach 600 points, and on the second one you have to reach 1535. What makes this even worse is that the number increases on challenge mode from 600 to 950. And the 1535 to 1950. Good lord, I seriously don't want to figure out how much worse this is on challenge mode. And I refuse to do the skill points on challenge mode because the enemies are so unbalanced on challenge mode that they take way longer to take out. So no thank you. And you know, as if one arena wasn't bad enough, there's another one. I swear, I didn't even know this one existed until now. Do cows get crabby is annoying to deal with. You have to turn 26 crabs into cows using the moderator. When you return to the planet, there are exactly 26 crabs. The issue with this skill point is that when you turn an enemy into a cow, there is this like explosion that can happen which kills nearby enemies. So what I had to do is make sure that they are all apart from each other in order to turn them all into cows. I even saw some reports saying it just wouldn't work for them. So my guess is this is just another bugged skill point that just works whenever it feels like it. I didn't even use an upgraded one. I used the level 1 moderator, so like, use that one, I guess. Wool Protest is acquired by completing Diny Moon without killing any of the sheep. This one is impossible to do on your first visit because the first room has the door shut until you kill all of the enemies. So you have to do it on your second visit. Again, this isn't a difficult skill point, it's just annoying. Mainly due to how long it takes to turn daytime again so you can move on. It took like 4 minutes after the first room until it turns daytime again. So you just be awkwardly trying to either avoid the enemies continuously or you're just standing there not doing anything. The next room also just requires you having to wait until it turns daytime again. So like again, it's not difficult, it's just one of those annoying skill points you have to collect. Ratchet's Just Ratchet requires you to beat Clank's level with only using the Omni Wrench. I recommend you to equip the Electroshock armor due to its Hyper Strike effect being super useful. And by the way, I also saw reports on this one that it sometimes just doesn't work. So I guess once again, this is another bugged skill point that just does whatever the heck it wants. You cannot be serious. By the way, something funny I noticed is that once you leave Clank's body, you can see Luna in the background just running in the air for some reason. Elite Annihilation is acquired by defeating 70 of the Ratchet clones during the final fight. The fight itself is limited by a 3-minute timer and it involves Ratchet clones just constantly respawning. You have to stay careful here because they will take you out in like 2 hits. Yeah, armor is pretty useless in this game when everything could just easily kill you. So I recommend getting the shield as well for this. All I did was use the shock rocket and occasional hyper strikes with the electroshock armor equipped. Seeing as the enemies take you out in like 2 hits, I'm assuming they take you out in like 1 hit in challenge mode. So I'd recommend doing the skill point on a new save file. Which, by the way, this entire section is pretty much just there to get the skill point really. Because if you don't, you can just run in circles for 3 minutes and not get hit by any of the clones. The last skill point requires you to complete the level in less than 1 minute and 45 seconds. You know, this sounds all well and good until the game just started to make the objects invisible. What the heck is this? How did that even happen? Is this like a glitch with the PS5 port or was this also on PSP? Anyways, I was still able to get to the end of the level, but the skill point wouldn't count. I've tried getting this one multiple times with the same broken backgrounds. I even attempted to restart the level and it still wouldn't count. So what I did was teleport to the starting point and then jump into the lava and then try it again, and this time it actually worked. Seriously, I have no idea why it just didn't work until I died and try again. The disappearing objects glitch also didn't happen after dying, so like maybe that has something to do with it, I guess? I don't know. And with that I got all of the skill points in Size Matters. Seriously, this wasn't really all that fun to do. Mainly because the skill points are so buggy that it just picks and chooses when you're allowed to have it or not. Being forced into those arenas and other minigames because they knew otherwise people wouldn't play these, and also making the skill points significantly harder to collect on challenge mode. I wouldn't recommend getting the skill points in challenge mode and just do it on a regular playthrough. Once you obtained all the skill points, you were able to go to the high impact treehouse, which is something I always wanted to explore because I loved the Insomniac Museum in the previous games. And I'm disappointed. There aren't really that many noteworthy cut content aside from a cut weapon and 1 cut enemy type. Most of the map is just cinematics that show concept art, which could have just been put in bonus menus like the past games did. Yeah, I'm sorry, but this is a pretty lame reward in my opinion. I mean, it's cool of them, but like, I like the Insomniac Museum way more. Good lord, let me tell ya, recording for the PS3 is a nightmare. So here's a little story. I have an Elgato to record my games, which uses HDMI. The PS3 has this protection thing called HDCP that prevents people from recording games on it using HDMI. The PS4 and 5 have the option to turn off HDCP so I can record gameplay. But since the PS3 doesn't have this option normally, my option would be to jailbreak the console, but I don't want to do that first off. So the second option I heard was, oh, get this HDMI splitter which bypasses the HDCP. I swear, and so many people online said that it worked. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll do that. So I went and bought one, and guess what? It didn't work. So I thought maybe the model I had doesn't work for the PS3. So I bought 2 completely different splitters made by 2 different companies. And guess what? Both didn't work. So then I was like, okay, well then I guess maybe it has to be a very specific model that people say you have to get. So I bought that very specific model that I would find, and guess what? It still didn't work. So I was completely out of options until I stumbled upon one video that told me I could record gameplay by using component cables. So what I did was buy those PlayStation component cable thingies and an HDMI converter thingy, which also has its own separate power plug, and only then was I able to get both video and audio on OBS. I know the video quality is slightly worse by comparison to HDMI, but screw it, okay? This is the best we're gonna get. I already spent a lot of money trying to get all this equipment, so this better be worth it. Anyways, Tools of Destruction. This time there's a total of 55 skill points to collect. And while Going Commando only has 3 general skill points, this game has a lot more general skill points to collect, around 16. Collecting the skill points in this game wasn't all that difficult really, but it was a chore to collect them all. You'd actually be surprised to know that this is the only game in the series where you have to 100% the game in order to get all the skill points. I was seriously expecting other games to follow up on that after beating TOD, but luckily I didn't have to. Which means yes, you have to collect all the gold bolts, you have to get all the weapons and upgrade them, you have to get every device, every gadget, every weapon, and heck, every skill point to get the final skill point. So let's go over the interesting ones. Hey guys, did you like Wrench Ninja 1 and 2 in Going Commando? Well, in this game there's a Wrench Ninja 3. Oh boy. I was actually attempting to do this on my first visit, but here comes the annoying part about this. This game introduces enemies with shields, so I had to like figure out a way to get around it in some way. Then I got to this part and realized that I can't even do the skill point on my first go because there are flying enemies I can't reach with the wrench at all. So I pretty much did this attempt for nothing. So you have to do the skill point on your second visit, otherwise you won't get it at all. Been around is a weird one. So the challenge here is to take off from every RoboWing launch pad in the city. But once again, it seems to be another one of those skill points that just do whatever the heck they want and don't register when you've done it sometimes. Which did indeed happen to me once, but luckily not here. It's a bit hard to find all of the launch pads you haven't used yet around the whole map, so this one actually might take you a while. Tools of Destruction has those on-rail ship levels, which yes, they do include skill points as well. Good lord, and some of them are bad. Collector's Edition requires you to destroy all those containers floating around, but due to the depth perception and the camera moving constantly, and sometimes the speed of the ship changing randomly, it can be very easy to miss your shots, and you can't just restart the level again. You have to reload your save file in order to try again from the beginning, which is just annoying to do every time you just miss one single shot. And yes, you have to get all the bonus crates as well to get a gold bolt in all of them. One skill point I found kind of funny was you having to not kill any of the enemies on screen during the Wreckar Star cluster. But I think probably the most difficult skill point to actually pull off legit would be Can't Touch This during Vertigus Black Hole. This one requires you to reach the boss without getting hit prior. This is very difficult to do, especially those that shoot out these lasers across the screen. But luckily, there is a bug. If you die to the boss and then afterwards defeat him, the skill point will trigger even if you took damage during the first part of the level. I'm not kidding. Just die to the boss and the game thinks you completed the first part without dying. I guess miracles can happen. There is one skill point that requires you to ride this Ferris wheel for 5 loops without getting off or taking damage. It's like such a boring skill point due to how slow the Ferris wheel moves. I did accidentally jump off, so like I had to restart and do it again. Fast and the Furious is such a bizarre skill point. Like the challenge here is to use the charge boots to cross the bridge to the arena without getting burned. But like the issue is the fire doesn't go off in a way that makes it easy to traverse. Like the third tower thing doesn't shoot fire until you go near it, which at that point you're just gonna get hurt. And if you die before you get to the arena, you have to go through the entire level again. The way you are meant to do it is by pressing the square button to halt your momentum and then boost again. But like this seems to be like very unintentional because honest, like, I didn't even know you could stop your charge boots by pressing the square button, cause the text prompt only tells you that you can charge pressing R2, but even then it didn't work like at all. So what I had to do is redo the entire section again because I thought it bugged out or something, and only then was I able to do it. Like, you can't make this stuff up. Ardolus has a pretty bad skill point. Taste of your own medicine is obtained by killing all of the pirates that shoot at you with the combustor. The issue with the skill point is that even with a full upgraded combustor, it barely does any damage, meaning you can easily run out of ammo and you have to backtrack a few times in order to refill your ammo at the vendor. I'm really not a fan of these kinds of skill points, especially when all the other weapons at your disposal outperforms the combustor. By the way, I hope you like the crystal sections in going Commando and up your arsenal, because this game has another section. Psych, it's not actually that bad. This one only has 16 Leviathan souls to collect. Be glad it's not 100 again. One on Sargasso I found cute is having to land on the head of all of those dinosaur things. On Krilly Comet there's a skill point called Lombaxes Don't Like Cold, where you have to break all the icicles in the level without dying. Because when you die, the icicles will respawn and you have to do the entire level again. Yes, I didn't die on this level, but that's because I have gotten so good at this game that I rarely die. But just so you know that this is a pretty difficult level, as you do lose a lot of health. I mean, this is pretty much an issue with Tools of Destruction in general. Doesn't matter how strong your armor is, the enemies will always kill you in like 3 hits. This is an issue even on challenge mode, despite the fact I'm wearing the strongest armor in the game. There is literally a skill point where you have to beat the entire game on challenge mode. So that means you have to play the game again in order to get everything. Heck, you might need multiple playthroughs anyways, because you have to get all of the weapons upgraded to level 10, which is a chore because you barely do any damage with your weapons on challenge mode. Yes, I know you don't do much damage in the other games as well if you just bought a new weapon on challenge mode, but it really wasn't as bad as this game does it. Another skill point in this game, which I think is also one of the worst ones, is Everybody Dance Now, where you have to make every type of enemy in the game dance, which means you have to buy the golden Groovytron on challenge mode that gives you unlimited Groovytron usage. But not only does it cost 2 million Raritanium, which you would likely not have by the time you get this after your first playthrough, meaning you have to replay the entire game again just to make every enemy dance in the game. And because I did not trust the game to actually keep the progress if you quit the game and then come back another time, I played the entire game just rushing through everything and throwing the Groovytron. It took me 2 hours and 30 minutes to do this. When I got to the final boss to make him dance, the skill point did not show up at all and I was totally confused. So then I learned that you had to also make the penguins dance in order to get the skill point. Wow, seriously, this isn't fun. It's just a chore to get everything. But once I did, I can finally put this game to rest. Heck, the final skill point is after you collected every other skill points, which just says, get every skill and everything else in the game. Now go outside and play. Yeah, well. On to the next game. Ratchet and Clank, a Kraken time. Good lord, Secret Agent Clank. This is the second Ratchet and Clank game made by High Impact Games, and it's just as bad, if not worse, than Size Matters. Collecting the skill points in this game is far worse than all of the previous games up to that point. This game has 65 skill points, and most of them are either a chore to collect or are just really difficult and unfair. Like, I'm not even kidding, there are some that are easy, sure, but most of them are a chore to collect. This mainly due to not only the game incorporating stealth elements, but also there are like 3 other playable characters with their own skill points to collect, with each of them being just as tedious. I seriously don't think they thought this through when making the skill points. It feels like they slapped them together at the last second without properly playtesting them to see if they're actually fun to collect. Sure, there are some skill points in the past games that are difficult, but it wasn't like almost all of them that sucked. It especially didn't help when your arsenal barely do any damage and you run out of ammo very quickly. Like a good example is in the Ratchet arenas. The enemies eat up all of your bullets and you run out of ammo fairly quickly because the ammo crates barely give you any. The Walloper is like almost such a useless weapon to use because when you try and take out a group of enemies, you are still able to get hurt during your ground pound animation. There is one skill point that requires you to beat the mega challenge without getting hurt. It sounds simple enough, but not only are your weapons very weak, but also there are these big guy enemies that like puke acid on you, and like I swear to god, the hitbox on them makes absolutely no sense. Like look at this, I'm behind him, yet I still got affected by it? So what I did before moving on was spend like a good few minutes just playing the same challenges again off screen just to level up my weapons because I did not trust the later arenas to actually account for my weapon's power level. And I was correct. By the way to strafe in this game is by using the D-pad because of the PSP's lack of L2 and R2. Just like size matters. But you do have the option to change the strafing to the stick. I would recommend doing that for this game due to how fast paced everything is. There is one skill point that requires you to kill 5 enemies by making them run into the Molotov cocktails. But like the enemies always walk around the fire. So you have to deliberately make it so that they throw the cocktails at you while there are other enemies next to you. When you get to Asianica, this is where you get introduced to the gadget bot sections. And good lord, it's so bad. There are like 4 gadget bot sections in this game, and all of them require you to beat them under a certain time limit. These are brutal because there are absolutely no room for failure. If you make even one single mistake, it's over and you have to restart the challenge. That's easier said than done because so much can go wrong during this, especially when you have to keep your gadget bots alive and make sure they're actually following you and don't get stuck on something. These gadget bot sections aren't really bad, aside from that one that takes like 8 minutes and 25 seconds in Fort Sprocket. Because Jesus Christ, this is a long section and so much can just go wrong here. You need to have a pretty good memory of the whole level in order to do them properly. So unless you don't want to use the save states at all, you might as well try over and over again until you get it right, which is very time consuming. There was one in Asianica where I had to only use the tire rank to take out all of the enemies. I did just that, but the game was like, nah, it doesn't count. So I had to do the whole level again because of it. I love it when the skill points just don't register when I did that task properly. One skill point I found interesting was having to destroy this Godzilla boss without using your regular blaster. I thought this was gonna be annoying and time consuming, but no actually. You do a decent amount of damage with the super laser. But there's the skill point where you have to kill 99 ninjas, which is a bit time consuming because like the idea in the boss fight is that you punch them into the laser to deactivate it. So you can't really punch them in front of the laser towers because they'll automatically go into it. It's best to just turn around and punch them in the opposite direction. Empty the Warrens requires you to kill over 89 Tyrannoids in the Tyrannoid Recycling Challenge. This is a bit of a tough one because not only do you have like other enemies trying to kill you as well, but there are times where the Tyrannoids don't quickly spawn in. The challenge does require you to kill 100 enemies, so do your best to avoid all of the other enemies. I tried killing them with the Lacerator, but it didn't look like I killed 89 of them according to the game. So then I tried doing it with the Walloper, which again is such a pain to use because you are still able to easily get hurt while using the weapon. So don't die. Rheanosis is where it gets really boring. It's a tailing mission where you have to follow the Kingpin without getting spotted while taking out all of his goons. The thing with this is there are 3 different skill points you have to acquire. So in order to get all of them, you have to reset the mission multiple times, which means doing most of the same thing over and over again. One of them requires you to take out all of the goons before he gets to the 4th tourist card. One of them requires you to use the trash can to lure them out and kill all of them one by one. One of them requires you to use all of the tourist cards, meaning you have to take all of them out aside from one. And you have to make sure to not get caught by them, otherwise you have to redo the mission all over again, which can be a pain to do because of how slow everyone moves. Steel Rain is such a bizarre skill point to pull off because it requires you to knock 10 robots off the cargo ship. The problem is there are other robots who shoot at you, which will just end up killing you. So my trick was to try and take them all out so I can focus on the little ones. But the problem here is all the small robots come with them in groups, and they also jump to the ship you're on. Obviously I was attempting to kill them when they're not near any of them, but the issue is I have to keep moving, otherwise they're right behind me. And when the robots are about to jump to another ship, they for some reason can't be hurt at all when they're in their jumping over animation. And there are also small bots that self-destruct, so they can easily take out the small ones that I need for this skill point. So it was another one of those skill points that was just a pain to get through. I mean, some of them do jump off on their own, but again, the likelihood of that happening isn't for like all 10 of them to do it. Hey, do you like the terrible casino level? Well, do you know how to make it even worse? Beat the House requires you to stealth kill all of the guards in this level without getting detected at all. If you get detected, you have to do the entire thing again. And again, this is another one of those skill points that just take forever to do because of how slow it is. What makes it even more annoying is that you have to sit there and watch the same stealth takedowns every single time. You can't skip the animation. You even have to use the hollow monocle a few times because some guards are in a very awkward position and you can easily get caught if you're not careful. Like, come on, it's hard enough to look at your surroundings because the camera is so zoomed into your character. You cannot be serious. Secret Agent Clank also has those vehicle levels with their own skill points. I wouldn't say they're difficult, it's just once again time consuming because you have to play the same thing over and over again just to get it right. This skill point annoyed me because Wake of Destruction requires you to break everything in the environment. When you run out of ammo, you have to run into the things to break them, which once again makes me think they didn't think it through very well. I did break everything in the environment like so many times, but the skill point just wouldn't count. I have no idea why, because I did break everything there was to break. I did eventually get it, but like again, this is once again one of those skill points that just works whenever it feels like it. Then we get another Quark level here, where the skill point in this requires you to get 150,000 points. This one isn't that bad, but it's another one of those, oh, if you mess up, you might as well restart the entire thing. The best way is not to get hurt at all. And you can also use those sandbags to get extra points. I was gonna do that skill point together with Magnum Opus, which is acquired by collecting this without taking damage, which is easier said than done. The only enemies that have ranged attacks are the sea lemurs and the stupid butterfly. Look at those attacks, just look at it. It's almost unpredictable as to where he's gonna shoot. It's such a cheap attack. And again, if you don't use save states, you might as well try again. And what makes it worse is that I did play the entire section without getting hurt, but once again, the game was like, oh no, that didn't count, and I had to do it all over again. Tinkle Toes requires you to jump off 5 butterflies in a row, and this skill point largely relies on luck, as the butterflies move around randomly. Literally, why are you doing this to me? You cannot be serious. The casino level wasn't the only level that required you to use stealth in order to get skill points. In Fort Sprocket, you are required to kill 2 doppelgangers while being disguised as one, and in Spaceship Graveyard, you have to stealth kill all the enemies without being seen. Again, this is another one of the skill points that aren't necessarily difficult, but it just takes forever to get, and you have to hope that you don't make a single mistake, otherwise you have to restart the whole thing. You cannot be serious. This was around the time where I also took a break for like 2 weeks, because I was just so burnt out by only playing Ratchet and Clank. This skill point is really stupid. You have to kill all of the pirates in this by only using punches. The issue is enemies not only have ranged attacks, but also there are these turrets that are really difficult to avoid, and it's really difficult to get behind them so that they don't shoot you. I have been using the rewind feature a lot, because seriously, how are you supposed to do that? The next one is really bad. As if the giant Clank level in Size Matters weren't boring enough already, this game has another one. And once again, you have to reach a certain score to get the skill point, which, yes, once again, is increased in challenge mode. What sucks about this one is I did kill all of the enemies on screen, but for some reason, the points just weren't enough. So get this. I figured out that in order to get the skill point, it's dependent by how much debris you destroyed. I'm not kidding. If you didn't at least have 298 points by the end of this first section, you might as well kiss the skill point goodbye. And in the second part, there are these things you have to shoot, which also give you points. And only then was I barely able to make it by only 5 points in advance. They do not give you any leeway in this, I swear to God. I had to replay this level 4 times in order to get the skill point. You cannot be serious. The rest of the skill points are not actually that bad, but nothing prepares you for the absolute worst skill points in this game. Oh yes, there is one thing I forgot to mention about this game. These horrible rhythm minigames. Good lord, they're terrible. Why are they bad, you might ask? Well, it's because of 2 things. The button prompts aren't always in line with the song's rhythm, which can easily throw you off when all you have been doing so far is to go by the rhythm of the music in the background. The second is you have to be very precise with the button presses to get it to be green. I'm not kidding. You aren't allowed to be any second too early or too late. And on top of that, the game runs at 30 FPS, so sometimes it's hard to really make out when you are able to press the buttons. So what are the skill points? The first 2 require you to get through the whole segment without missing any button presses. Yes, you heard that right. Without missing a single button. And this is easier said than done. I seriously wonder how anyone has the patience to actually do this properly. Like, no wonder not that many people have actually done all of the skill points in this game when you have such garbage like this. And you don't have to do it just once, you have to do it twice. But wait, there's a third one. What could possibly that be? Well, this one is acquired by completing the rhythm minigame with an exact score of 77,700 points. I am not joking. You have to hit that specific number. This means you need to reach that score upon reaching the second gadget pod section, as you stop acquiring points after that. You will have to miss a few button presses here and there to avoid getting too high of a score, while simultaneously not missing too many to avoid taking damage. You cannot be serious. You need to keep an eye on the multiplier to avoid overshooting the target while simultaneously not reaching the score too fast, as you still need to survive through this entire thing. I seriously don't know how anyone has the patience to do that legit. I seriously have no idea why they thought it was a good idea. It makes me question if anyone actually playtested this at all, or if they just slapped this on at the last minute. This game is made by lunatics, I tell ya. But hold on, there's one more skill point I gotta talk about. Probably one of the most infamous skill points in this game, next to the rhythm minigames. Perfect Mirror. This one is acquired by completing the last Quark level without ever letting the dam take any damage. This challenge is really difficult, both in how you not only need to be aware of when the gunners come in, but also in how long it takes to finish, because this is 20 freaking rounds. The ones without guns are just gonna go after you, so it's easy to deal with them. But your focus should be primarily on the gunners. And if you seriously think I'm gonna take the time to memorize every single spawn from these gunners, well then you could just go eat a sock. But even then, the gunners easily spread out and go after them and not you. Which means they expect you to be like super quick. Like, I have no idea. And what makes it even worse is that you have to make sure they don't actually shoot in the direction of the dam. Jesus Christ, how? How do you do that? Oh my god, you gotta be kidding me. How? Look how many there are, like I don't understand. How? I don't understand. How? I don't understand. What do you expect me to do here? What? How? I don't understand. What do you expect me to do here? Look at this nonsense. Oh my god. I can't believe this. How? Look, I'm here. I'm doing it. I'm right under. Look at this. I don't understand. How is anyone supposed to do this legit? Like seriously, 20 rounds of this, how? How? I don't understand! This was really bad. Like really bad. I am once again convinced that they didn't actually playtest any of this to see if it's actually fun to do. And once again, I have been using the rewind feature a lot because if you seriously expect me to do this legit, then like I don't know what to tell ya. It's probably for the best that I did it that way for my own sanity. Like if you seriously want to do this legit, then be my guest. I gotta thank PS Play's guide with the skill points. Really helped me out a lot to get this over with a lot quicker.
Looks like it sucks to be him.
With this game, I can pretty much say, okay, we're back to basics again. Not only is A Crack in Time one of the best Ratchet and Clank games, but also the skill points in this game are once again pretty fun to collect. They aren't all super difficult and cheap. There are 46 skill points in this game, with the general ones not only being grouped in separate categories, but also it's increased from 16 to 21. I once again don't have much to say here, but there were still some pretty interesting ones I can go over. So here is one that like annoyed me a little. On planet Lumos, there are these invisible crates scattered around the level, and you have to destroy every one of them in order to get the skill point. Like obviously the problem here is that you can barely see them at all. I did find almost all of the crates at the end of the level, but Jesus Christ, I spent so much time looking for any crates I'm missing around the whole map. And you have to remember that this is a pretty big open map, so crates could be anywhere. Until I did eventually found out that the crates I was missing was on this spot right here. And I still didn't get the skill point until I realized that one of the crates actually fell off and I had to go and find it. This one will definitely take you a while just because of them being scattered around the map. They do come in piles, so you don't have to worry about looking for like a single invisible crate. Heck, one cheap spot was them hiding behind this waterfall where I couldn't see them at all. Lifted and Gifted requires you to complete an arena challenge entirely on hover boots, but like for some reason when you get to this turret challenge you get the skill point automatically. Flawless was a bit of a challenge here. You have to finish the last challenge without getting hit at all. The thing is, the game doesn't have that many weapons that kill a crowd of enemies super quickly. I did just use the boss blades cause it's like the only weapon that spreads around everywhere and hits other enemies and is pretty fast at shooting. But like even then you have to be pretty careful and not get hit by anything, which is easier said than done cause not only is it 20 rounds, but they do spawn a lot of enemies and at the end you have to fight the arena bosses. The Battleplex has a skill point which requires you to keep your blaster in the hot state for 60 seconds in My Blaster Runs Hot. Like not only do you have to make sure the bar stays in this orange area, but also make sure it doesn't go up all the way. Like this line right here threw me off because I thought the bar has to fill up all the way up, but no, it's game over when you reach that line. All I did in this was just stay in the first screen. Make sure you don't save the civilian so that no more enemies can spawn in, and just make sure that the bar stays on orange. Like it's a bit annoying that you have to keep all of this up, but it's not too bad honestly. Here is a pretty weird one. So in the Bernelia sector there's a skill point called Hit and Run, which requires you to destroy 10 enemies by ramming them with the quantum reflector. The issue here is that the ships are way faster than you, so you have to like find a way to like get ahead of them in some way and then use the shield. I did it by like awkwardly rolling from the side and then activating the shield and just hoping it'll eventually get one of them. You are allowed to die in this, so like don't worry about that. It's bizarre because all of the previous ship level skill points are like pretty easy actually, but then there's just this out of nowhere. It's pretty weird. Friend or Fred requires you to defeat 10 enemies with a single shot from the Rift Inducer. You can't get the skill point right away because they intentionally made it so that the Rift Inducer stops at only 9 enemies on level 1. So you have to level up the Rift Inducer on level 3 in order for it to kill 10 enemies. Orvison is like such an easy skill point. The skill point requires you to time bomb 250 projectiles, but once you have obtained the Rhino you can just shoot into the time bomb and get the skill point. So here Here is a skill point that I have seriously no idea how it works. So in the Great Clock, there's a skill point called What Goes Up, which requires you to keep a crate suspended in midair for more than 3 seconds. I have tried so many times on every single stacked crate to throw a time bomb and hit the bottom parts, but none of them seemed to give me the skill point at all. I eventually got it by teleporting to Sector 2 and hit the crates until it looked like this, and then I hit it and the crate was, I guess, suspended for more than 3 seconds in the air, I guess? I seriously have no idea, because it doesn't look very different from what I did with the other crates. There is one video I found where the guy hits the crates in the room where you get the staff and like managed to keep this one crate barely standing on the other one, and they got the skill point. What? I think the hardest skill point to get in this game is Master of Time, which requires you to reach round 30 in the fixed time minigame. Keep in mind, you need to complete round 30 and reach round 31 to acquire the skill point. The anomalies will get faster and faster on each round until it's like nearly impossible to do so. I only managed to get to round 32 because at that point the anomalies were so quick I was barely able to get them in time. This skill point might take you a few tries because of how intense it can get and how fast you have to shoot all of the anomalies. I did manage to get it first try, but still, you know, not everyone is gonna be able to do it first try. What makes this a bit annoying is that it takes around 5 minutes to complete this. So if you're not able to do it on your first try, the time you'll spend attempting it will just increase. And I think those are all the interesting ones. Overall, it's a breeze to get through. There are some skill points that work a lot better in specific spots, and it's mostly pretty easy to get all of them. Not a whole lot to say here anymore, so let's move on. Oh yeah, I also managed to fall through the floor on the sphere level, so that's fun. This game. Jesus Christ on a bicycle. Yeah, this is another game in the series that I just don't like. The main issues I have is that your partner AI is like so poor that they constantly get stuck on things or just stand there and don't help you out when you need them. The second reason is that your weapons are so weak that all the enemies in the game just eat up all of your ammo. That's because they heavily rely on this co-op thing that should kill the enemies way faster, but they still eat up all of your bullets. The story is also like really boring and unmemorable because there's barely anything happening really other than Ratchet, Clank, Quark and Nefarious walking around to their destination. I mean, there are some standout moments which are really funny, but overall it's kinda eh.
I believe I know someone who can fix you.
Well, I don't like to brag, but I did modify my crotchetizer with a special vibrating function I call the Happy Platypus. You know, I'm actually starting to like it here. Sure, it's a dangerous planet riddled with murderous robots and exotic predators, but take away all that, and what do you have? A presidential retreat / water park.
Can I kill him now?
No.
I can make it look like an accident.
How?
Ratchet.
Alright, no.
There are a total of 100 skill points in this game, and the only reason there are 100 of them is because they added in unnecessary skill points like kill 50 enemies with the combustor, kill 100 enemies with the combustor, kill 200 enemies with the combustor, kill 25 enemies with the rhino, kill 50 enemies with the rhino, kill 100 enemies with the rhino. A lot of these skill points are just kill X number of enemies with this specific weapon, which is like, why would you make such skill points in the first place? You're not gonna be using like every weapon at your disposal in order to kill 1 million enemies in every single one of them on your first run. So you have to replay the game multiple times in order to get all of them, which is something I will get into later. This game probably took me way longer to get all of the skill points than all of the other games in the series. But before I explain myself as to why, I gotta talk about other skill points. I think one of the problems you will encounter in this game are skill points that rely heavily on your AI partner. Because like I said, the AI can either get stuck for no reason or they just won't respond as quickly as you want them to. Heck, some skill points I would even recommend you using your partner AI and not another player. Like for example, there is one skill point that requires you to navigate the waters without damaging the raft. And since the AI always mimics your actions, it's way better than having another player with you. One skill point I found to be pretty cheap is Grind Rail Ace, where you have to avoid all of the hazards on the final grind rail in Nest. Like the first few hazards are pretty easy to avoid until you get to this part in particular, where Commander Spock begins placing these saw blades on the grind rail. Not only are are they very small, but also they're very hard to see due to the game feeling like they need to have this blur effect right in front of you. You cannot be serious. I swear, this pissed me off because, like, just look at it. I managed to somehow get it by staying on the left side and then just somehow do it. But other than that, this is such a cheap way to even do the skill point in the first place. Cold-Hearted is one of the worst skill points in the game. This one requires you to destroy all the icicles throughout the entire Polar Sea section, which requires you playing through all the levels in a single sitting. The issue here is that the icicles blend into the environment, so it's hard to see them, and you have to make sure you broke all of them because you can't go back and break the ones you miss. And what makes it worse is that you can't die a single time, otherwise all of the icicles will respawn. You cannot be serious. And this is already a pretty difficult level due to the waves of enemies and platforms you have to get across. I died a few times during this level and had to redo the entire thing like 4 times. There's another one in the Dead Grove that requires you to break all of the rock piles with the Quake Hammer. But the Dead Grove is a pretty easy level to get through and they only appear in the first 2 levels. Another skill point that sucked required you to destroy all of the Pyromite generators in Polar Sea. Even with the Rhino, it was still a pain to destroy all of them, because not only did they buff the generators compared to the others in the game, but also there are all these small ones that when they get near you and blow up, they knock you out for like a few seconds. But by far the worst skill point in this game has to be Jetpack Master. This one is earned by completing the access shaft level without touching any hazards. This is easier said than done because not only does this level last about 7 minutes, but so many things could go wrong here. You sometimes have barely any room to navigate and it's very easy to get hit by something due to how floaty it is to move with the jetpack and to deal with the enemies, which by the way, I would recommend getting your AI partner to deal with the enemies that are in the way, which there's also a problem there because the AI does like to get stuck on other obstacles and doesn't go down to deal with the enemies. So you have to kind of bait them into going down there to deal with them. The trick to this is supposed to be patience, but like to me, I did start getting impatient because I was getting mad because I swear sometimes it's just not even my fault and it's the game deciding to screw me over. Enemies who don't start shooting their lasers, which makes you think it's safe to go down, and then they screw you over. Things hitting you from off screen without you knowing it. Obstacles who sometimes just don't move all the way down despite the visuals making it seem like it's gonna do that. This level has it all. It took me over an hour just trying to do this one skill point and I was getting pretty mad over it. Come on. What? No. 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 That did not just happen. No. That did not just... Oh my god. No. Oh my god. No way did that just happen. No way. I was so close. I was so close. I got hit by something off screen. I got hit by something off screen. Oh my god. Oh my god. And to make the skill point collecting even worse this game, you have to beat the game as each character in order to get them. I am not kidding. There is even one that requires you to play the game in grief mode, where you can pick another player up with the vacuums without them needing to jump in it. I think they were expecting you to play the game with multiple people, but because I had no one else and I was the only one playing the game, I had to replay the game 4 times as each character. You cannot be serious. Why would you include such a skill point if you didn't take into consideration there are people who would play this game alone? And what makes it even worse, there are skill points that are impossible to do alone. They require you to have another player in order to get them all. But it's not entirely hopeless because there are some skill points that are meant to be done in co-op, but you're able to do it alone. Have You To Met requires you to get one of the turret enemies to kill the other. The issue with this is that the AI will always go behind the enemy and shoot at them. So what you have to do is pick them up with the vacuum so that they can't do anything. Master Infiltrator requires you to get through the facility without being spotted by the sentry minions. You are meant to have another player because the AI can easily just walk into the scanning thing that they have and get easily spotted by it. The way to do it is by picking the AI up and either bringing him with you or just tossing them off the level and get rid of the sentries yourself. Now the issue is that I believe this skill point is bugged because of the last room where the 3 sentries are. The first issue is that they can see you despite you not being anywhere near the scanner thing, which isn't a stupid thing for me to assume considering the same thing applied to a previous part of the level. But there was one part that I unfortunately didn't record, where the sentries detected me before I even went all the way down, and it ruined the skill point. And also one part where they detected me even when I was hiding behind the wall. So this is the way I did it. You will have to use Nefarious for this because he has a special weapon that makes him invisible. So first off, throw the AI off the platform and go down alone. Turn invisible and then jump to the other side and destroy all of them. And with that, I was able to get the skill point. There's another sentry skill point which is also annoying to do, but this time you have to get past the sentry minions without getting killed or killing them. The issue is this one stupid part at the end where the sentries scan the environment at random. It took me quite a few tries to get this one without getting killed, and by the way, I recommend turning on grief mode in order to pick up the AI at will, because they will destroy the sentries. The issue is also your partner isn't supposed to get killed by them as well. So what I was able to do is wait till the sentries scan the other side, move, shoot your partner to the other side and then quickly grab the slingshot to get past. And with that I was able to get the skill point. In order to get the skill points that I couldn't get alone was me having to call my sister and asking if she wanted to hang out on weekends. So she came over and helped me get the rest of the skill points I couldn't get. And after that we played Lego Star Wars, which was fun. The skill points that are impossible to do alone is Medic, Nurse and Doctor, which require you to revive another player 15 times. Dream Crusher is earned by doubling second place's bolt count. The way this is the best attempted is the other player letting you acquire the bolt grabber and hoard as many bolts as possible. Green Eyes Monsters earned by obtaining Bolt Master at 4 level end screen, which means one player has to get all of the bolts while the other just sits back, and you have to do it in one sitting. Which, by the way, the game did crash on me a few times, so I was lucky that this didn't happen here. The Quark Award of Excellence is earned by receiving the Noob Award at 4 level end screens. It's best to have another player just fall off the level a few times. Guardian Angel requires you to have 3 players. So what we did is connect a third controller, turned on grief mode, and just picked the third player up until we got to a spot where the character can die twice, so that one of us can revive them twice in a row. You cannot be serious. Deadlocked and Loaded requires you to beat an arena in Alderos Plains with only your melee weapons. The problem is that the partner AI always starts shooting the enemies, so it's impossible to do with it. You need to get another player to help you. In Polar Sea, we had to defeat a Grungoth with only our melee weapons, and the problem with that is that the Grungoth had so much health and he had such a huge hitbox. We had to constantly circle around the enemy and make sure to revive each other each time one of us got down. I would recommend turning on unlimited sprint for this one, so you can get away easier. We actually did die after we almost killed it and had to do the whole thing again, but we did eventually do it. And with that I was able to get all of the skill points. So yeah, it was a bit of a pain to get through it, and it did take me a pretty long time. This wasn't really all that fun, and I was glad they completely removed the requirement to have another player to get through the skill points in the next game. So Ratchet and Clank Full Frontal Assault, or Ratchet and Clank Q-Force, is another crappy co-op game made by Insomniac Games. This game is supposed to celebrate the series' 10th anniversary. It even has this logo when starting up the game. But the game is not only ass, but it's a tower defense game. You celebrate the 10th anniversary of Ratchet and Clank with a tower defense game, with a crappy villain being a character that some people have probably never met before, doing a bunch of outdated memes and says a bunch of stupid things. Great. The same issue from the previous game is in this, being that your weapons are really weak. According to what I read online, Insomniac has patched the game to increase the maximum level up from 3 to 5. And actually, when your weapons have been fully leveled up, the game actually becomes a lot more fun because the weapons actually end up being as strong as they should be. Why is this game even called Q-Force when none of the Q-Force from Ratchet and Clank 3 are present in this game, aside from Ratchet, Clank and Quark, who show up in like every game anyways. Alright, let's actually get into the skill points. Which, by the way, the Ratchet and Clank fandom wiki has pretty much given up giving any guides to it, because all of the descriptions are the ones the game gives you. And I haven't seen any guides about this game online anywhere, so I was completely on my own for that one. We have 117 skill points in this game, and once again, most of it is just kill X number of enemies with a specific weapon. Luckily this time it doesn't require you to use every weapon, but it's still just a waste of time, meaning that you have to grind in these levels just to get everything. You know, at least Deadlocked was a bit more creative with its weapon usage, cause at least you had to do a specific task with them instead of just kill X number of enemies. I have to mention before we move on that there are skill points that you are only able to collect in online multiplayer matches, and most of them are just win PvP matches. And since I can't play online due to multiple reasons, I wasn't able to actually get them. So I mean, technically I did collect every skill point except for the ones you can only get online. They aren't really worth talking about really, so yeah. There are only 4 levels in this game, with one of them being a reskin of the second level, and each one of them requires you to do the same exact skill points. Get all weapon pods and complete the level without dying. Complete a level with all generators active. Destroy all the crates in the level, and complete the level under a certain time limit. Now, these are all well and good, but the issue I had at first is that the level design on some of these levels were just such a mess to figure out, that you can easily get lost in them. The best example of that is Proteus 7, because everything looks exactly the same, but once you have the level down, it's not actually too bad. This does mean that the time limit skill points might require you to retry it a couple of times, due to it requiring you to know the layout of the level. Heck, what makes this even worse is that when you finish the level, the timer is still going until the ship actually starts lifting off, which means you could actually lose some time. The ones that were a pain for me was having to destroy all of the crates, because not only can you get easily lost in the levels, having you to constantly circle around them to make sure you haven't missed any, but also there are times where enemies might start attacking out of nowhere, so you have to make sure nothing happens. Proteus 7 is the best example for that, because after a few minutes there are always these bombers that show up to attack your base. It also doesn't help when the game crashed on me a few times, meaning I had to collect all of the crates again. You cannot be serious. There are hidden skill points, with one of them being called Bully, where you have to beat Stuart Zergo without getting hit once, which I think is best achieved by using the Groovitron on him, so he can't do anything. I had to redo this a couple of times, because I got randomly hit by him a few times. And the best part of all is that you can't just simply restart the boss. You have to replay the entire level before you can fight him again. You cannot be serious. And then there are the Insomniac challenges, where you have to beat the death challenge time on each planet. I would recommend doing these once you have obtained the unlimited ammo cheat and got the boss blades on level 5, and also the Warmonger, so you don't have to look for the other weapon pods and can only use the boss blades to kill your enemies and focus on buying turrets and barriers. With each rank you also get a lot more speed, so I would also recommend doing that. I think these skill points are actually meant to be achieved easier in co-op, but it is possible to do it alone. Two of the most boring skill points to collect was getting to hoverboot a certain mile. The third one was having to hoverboot 100 miles. But the thing is, I was using the hoverboots throughout the whole game. Yet for some reason I was able to get the skill point where I had to run like 26.2 miles. So what I did is I went to the first level and just hovered around the map. It was really boring and it took me like half an hour just speeding around in circles just to get the skill point. You also have to glide like 1 mile in order to get all 3 skill points, so I had to do just this repeatedly until I got the skill point. There are also skill points where you have to buy like a certain numbers of turrets and barriers and traps, so like it's just gonna be a grind. Buy 25 cryo turrets, buy 25 pyro turrets, buy 25 warmonger turrets, buy 25 fusion turrets, buy 25
The definition of insanity is doing the exact same thing over and over again, expecting to change. That is crazy.
This game's skill points were surprisingly not as bad as All for One skill points, but once again, it's another one of those games where in order to get all of the skill points, you just have to grind a lot in each level to make sure that you actually upgraded everything, which gets really boring very quickly. I mean, there isn't really much to say at this point. Good luck, I guess.
I have a surprise for you. A little easy listening while you're aboard the Phoenix. It's not designed to drive you mad or anything.
Guys, I don't feel so good. I think I caught some sort of virus.
When I think about how many years I spent worshiping you,
Well, this is it, folks. The final game with skill points to collect. Into the Nexus is, in my opinion, the most whatever Ratchet and Clank game ever. It reuses a lot of the plots from the previous future games, like the Dimensionator, characters who want to be back with their own kind, teleporting enemies from another dimension, and so on. Not only that, but this is also one of the shortest mainline Ratchet and Clank games, with only having 5 planets, with one of them being an arena and the other being a filler level, but overall it's still a pretty fun game. One of the issues I had is that ammo crates don't always give you the ammo you need when you run out, which is not an issue the previous games in the series had. Despite being pretty short, they managed to put in 40 skill points in this game, and with this game I can say we are back to basics. The skill points are once again in the style of the other mainline games, and don't have stupid ones like kill X amount of enemies. And on top of that, there's an actual percentage bar showing how far you are in collecting the skill point, which is a pretty welcoming change. I mean, too bad it took them this long to introduce something like that, and it's also the final game to have skill points in it, but you know, keep on moving. Like, I don't understand why this is a skill point. Basically, what you have to do is perform all of Ratchet's moves, which are like all of the things you're gonna be using throughout the game anyway, so like, why is this even a skill point? Snowman City is a bit of a weird one. You have to complete the 0-hour blitz with only the winterizer. The issue is, once again, the ammo crates don't always give you the ammo you need, so this one might take you a few tries. I would recommend level up the winterizer a little bit so that you have a better chance of getting it. Psylocke has a pretty bad skill point. Vandal requires you to destroy all of the breakable glass windows. The issue with that is that some are pretty well hidden, and there are other windows who look very similar but can't be broken at all. Not just that, but there are also windows you have to break before you rise the water up that pretty much floods the first part of the level. So if you didn't break these windows before doing that, you're unable to get the skill point and have to retry in challenge mode. You cannot be serious. Luckily it didn't happen to me, but it was still a pain to look for all of the windows to break. On Planet Frame, there was a skill point that required you to hoverboard off of every ramp in the swamp. I thought this was gonna be a pain in the butt, but surprisingly it wasn't actually that bad. The ramps were always on like a specific path, and it also helps with the percentage bar showing you which ones you jumped off, so it does give you some leeway. Don't try this at home, can be a bit difficult. This one requires you to not get hit by any of the cars in the freeway. The problem is cars can just show up from off screen if you're not careful, so make sure you react fast. Galactic Marksman requires you to kill 3 enemies with a single shot with an upgraded plasma striker. You can't do that with a normal plasma striker, you have to upgrade it to level 5. The thing is just, I don't really like using snipers in Ratchet and Clank games, so you know, I had bought the plasma striker near the end of the game and only upgraded it to level 5 when I reached challenge mode, so this is where I was able to do it. But by far the most challenging skill points in this game are the ones from the Clank Neververse challenges. Every single one of them requires you not to get hit once, beat it under a time limit, and complete the puzzle while only changing gravity a certain number of times. The ones that annoyed me a little were the ones where you don't have to get hit a single time, because some of the hazards can be a bit cheap with the placements, but the other two were actually surprisingly fun to do. It requires you to use your brain to figure out when you should change gravity, and also makes you think what the fastest way of getting to the exit is. You aren't able to get all of the skill points on your first go. I did the ones where you shouldn't get hit on my first go, but after you beat the game, there's a new area that shows up on your map that you can go to redo the challenges. I think the hardest one was the third challenge, because there is this one section where you have to like move these platforms around and then push the box in like the correct way. It took me a while to figure it out, but you know, once you got it down, you got it down. So I guess this is all of them. Yeah, like there isn't really much to say here anymore about this game. Again, a lot of them are pretty simple and not that difficult. And those were all the skill points in the game. Looking back on it, it was quite a challenge, and it was pretty much what I was expecting going into it. It did open up a new way for me to experience these games, because like I said, I have never collected all of the skill points in the series before until now. With some games I rarely play at all. I would actually be surprised if skill points would return in the series, but I don't think they're gonna do that, because like I said, trophies have pretty much replaced the skill points, which doesn't really seem too bad of a thing for people who like collecting trophies in games. I'm not really much of a trophy hunter in video games, so I never really bothered, but I don't know, maybe I will collect the trophies in PS4 and Rift Apart one day. But I think for now I'll take a break from all this skill point hunting. In my opinion, Secret Agent Clank has to be the worst one to get all the skill points, followed up by All for One due to how time consuming and difficult they are. Not a lot of people have collected all of the skill points in the series, especially in later games, because a lot of people have been pretty radio silent when it comes to collecting them from what I've seen. So yeah, there isn't really too much to say here anymore. Go play the Ratchet and Clank series.